Hello and welcome to another ship review. Today we will talk about Breacher. Breacher is the Tech 1 min-motor combat frigate. In my opinion, Breacher is one of the best and probably even the best Tech 1 frigate currently because it offers good flexibility in feats, and these feats are quite strong on their own, and in addition they interact very strongly with the current meta. So in the current metagame, Breacher has the highest win rate among all Tech 1 frigates, and by quite some margin actually, which is a bit surprising to me. I wouldn't say that Breacher is that far ahead of all our options, but I would agree that it feels like this is probably the ship that should have the highest win rate. And another strong feature of this ship is that it's not that popular at all. Actually, among bottom 3 Tech 1 frigates in popularity. So a lot of your opponents will not have any decent experience against this ship. And this is a very strong advantage in frigate and destroyer PvP. Okay, so the ship has 3-4-3 slot layout. Initially, it was designed as a scrum kiter with one medium slot dedicated to active tank. So the cookie cutter feat would be something like 3 rocket launchers in high slots, Afterburner web scrum, plus medium ancillary shield booster. This is the intended design for Breacher. But the changes in the meta since 2020 were not kind to this basic feat. Firstly, in 2020, CCP added, as far as I remember, 20% to Tech 2 damage, to damage for Tech 2 ammo, for rage missiles basically. And to apply full damage with rage missiles against frigates with Afterburner, you need double webs. And so for Breacher, it became an issue. Do you want to have proper tank with medium ancillary shield booster and a single web, but when your DPS is not that competitive? Or do you want to drop your intended bonus and fit double webs, and in this case you get much better control and you get much better DPS, but you sacrifice a lot of tank? And generally the practice showed that it's better to fit more control and more damage rather than more tank. I would say in general it works like this in frigate PvP. You almost always want more control and more DPS rather than more tank in terms of hit points. So the Scrum Kiting feat evolved into something that looks a bit weird. Now you have 3 rocket launchers in high slots, and then you have Afterburner, Scrum, and double web. And when in 2022 Navy destroyers were released, and now a decent portion of your engagement profile, you can see on the performance map, it would be something like 10 to 20% of your engagement profile is Navy destroyers. And to deal with Navy destroyers, you have to kite. You cannot scrum kite and still win the fight. And this pushed Breacher feats more into light missiles. So you can see that nowadays about 30% of Breachers use light missiles. 5 to 6 years ago, I think it was less than 10%. And this would be one of the feats that I recommend actually. And overall, you can see that the engagement profile for this ship is very decent. You can fight all Tick 1 frigates and Tick 1 destroyers, and you can quite reasonably engage against Navy frigates and Navy destroyers. Against Navy destroyers, you usually will have to go with a kiting feat, and against Navy frigates, you can either go kite or scrum kite with double webs if you're in position. Okay, so now let's look at all of these feats and discuss how they work in a bit more detail. Okay, so let's start with the most basic standard feat, just so that you know how the typical breacher looks like, and then we will look into more modern and meta alternatives. So a standard feat, you would use classic Afterburner Web Scrum and then medium Ancillary Shield Booster, and this will be your main tank. And you usually also feed Ancillary Armor Rep as a secondary tank in your low slot, since your cap and your fitting allows for that. The general idea for this feat is to scrum kite, and then, since you have so much tank, just to win straight DPS races. And it works perfectly fine in Tick 1 frigate against Tick 1 frigate fights, because the vast majority of Tick 1 frigates will have a single web as well. But of course, nowadays, a good portion of your engagement profile is not Tick 1 frigates. So you have to deal with destroyers and you have to deal with Navy frigates. And when you start considering these matchups, this feat does not look as good. For example, when you fight against Navy frigates, you almost always will face double webs. And when you face double webs, you lose your advantage in control. And once you lose your advantage in control, it becomes a DPS race essentially. And the DPS race, you're not going to win, because you're Tick 1 frigate against Navy frigate, and Navy frigates always have higher tank and often have higher DPS. And same can be said against destroyers. Against destroyers, you need some mitigation. You can't just engage in the numbers game. And this feat does not have any mitigation. It's just a lot of tank and a lot of damage, and it doesn't work. So this feat evolved into something like this. Very similar, but now you have double webs. But what's the trade-off? Well, obviously, the big disadvantage is that now you lost your main tank. The breacher has a bonus to shield, active shield tank, and you really want it. And now you have to drop your main tank for additional control. So your tank is terrible. The advantages, well, firstly, you have better control. For example, now if you fight against Navy frigates in position, you usually still will have better control, because breacher is very fast naturally. You can see almost 1.2 meters per second base speed. And you have double webs, and one of these double webs is Tech 2. So even now, even if you are losing the DPS race, you can generally leave the fight. The second advantage is that when you fight against afterburning frigates, now you can use rage ammo for full application, so you get quite a bit higher damage. Obviously, this feat still does not work against destroyers, because now you just traded some of your tank for excessive control. You don't need double webs against destroyers, neither for application nor for range control. So this does not really work. You can trade one of the webs for tracking disruptor if you know that you are going to fight a destroyer, but in general, there are better options to fight destroyers close range when this pretty strange looking breacher with a tracking disruptor. But this feat is the meta choice currently against frigates, I would say. Okay, and what do you need to do if you want to fight destroyers? Well, in this case, you have to kite, and this is the feat. For kiting, it has been around actually for many years, but it never was that popular because the majority of matchups were frigate against frigate, and this feat is just not that great against frigates because of poor mitigation on light missiles. But nowadays it's making a comeback since destroyers are so popular. The feat is quite technical, so you have in medium slots Macro Warp Drive and Warp Disruptor, obviously, and then you have Tracking Disruptor for mitigation. And here again you can fit medium Ancillary Shield Booster that very nicely aligns with your tanking bonus. For low slots you need a pretty rare module for Frigate PvP, PDS, Power Diagnostic System. It gives you Cup and it gives you Power Grid, and you really need both of them in this specific setup. And then the rest is essentially speed and agility. For X you can play around a bit, you can fit more speed instead of DPS, you can fit more tank instead of DPS, or you can fit more speed instead of tank. Any of these options work. And for drones you generally want highest tanking drones, that is Caldari Navy Hornets, because a good portion of your overall DPS is in drones, so you would like to keep them on grid for as long as possible. Now, as I said, this feat works well against destroyers. Essentially, you counter the majority of the current metagame in destroyers. Against short-range destroyers, you obviously just have superior control, regardless of whether you're in position or out of position, and against most of the long-range destroyers, Tracking Disruptor gives you enough mitigation. And application against destroyers is not an issue, so your DPS is actually quite respectable. It's not great, but it's decent. Smart Destroyer will kill your drones immediately, but it does not really change the math. The destroyer will die eventually anyway. But this feat is not that great against frigates because you will have to use Navy missiles, and they can also kill your drones, and after that is just a half an hour fight. And you will need to manage your cap as well because you're not cap stable. It's doable, but it's just not the most efficient solution. But overall, this feat has a very decent engagement profile. So if you want something that's cheap and can fight most of the stuff that you will meet in faction warfare, this one works fine. One thing to note is that the cap is quite on the limit. This is with perfect character skills. If your character is not well skilled, you need to double check what kind of numbers on the capacitor are you getting, and if it's below something like 1.5 minutes, then you probably will need to drop one of the rigs or a capacitor rig. Otherwise it's just not sustainable because the fights will take a long time. Your DPS is not that great, especially against frigates. Okay, I think this is everything I wanted to say about the Breacher. So to summarize, this ship is probably the best Tick 1 frigates nowadays, especially if you go into these more meta feats, and it offers very good value for money, I think. So thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next ship reviews.